Hey youth, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Jordan, and today we're going to learn about character from the book of Titus. Has anyone ever given you a great piece of advice like,
Don't go into that haunted house.
abandoned buildings are riddled with construction hazards.
Don't agitate that rhino.
Wild animals are known to act aggressively when provoked.
Don't drink ocean water.
It's full of salt, and you'll die.
Don't stare at the sun.
It'll fry your eyeballs.
And never, ever cut your hair.
Well, the book of Titus has a section in chapter 2 that's giving advice to young men and young women who want to honor God with their lives. You can think of this as how God wants you to live as a Christian teenager.
Remember, the book of Titus was written to Christians who are facing all kinds of threats from their culture. Much of the book of Titus is written to Christians so that they can protect themselves. And as we've already seen in this study, we face these same kind of threats too. If you live the way that God's calling you to live, we can overcome these threats as well.
Stuff for young women. In Titus, there are instructions for 4 different groups of people: older men, older women, younger men, and younger women. Well, I'm going to focus on the section for younger women. Now, some of this will only apply to you when you're married, but there's a few things that we can start living out today. Train the younger women to love their husbands and their children, to live wisely and be pure, to work in their homes, to do good, and to be submissive to their husbands. Like I said, the stuff about loving your husbands and loving your children is for the future, but there are a few things we can start working on right now. Self-control. This is translated as live wisely. God calls us to have self-control. Now, there are many ways we can do that with our lives, but one of the main ways is to control your words. It can often seem acceptable to gossip, even if just to your friends, but God wants us to have self-control, especially with our words. Purity. God wants you to please Him in every area of your life. You can start that by pursuing purity in your relationships, but especially in your dating relationships. You see, the main priority is not to please your boyfriend and not to please yourself. In the long run, pleasing God is always the better option, and you can start doing that now. Kindness. God wants Christians, especially Christian women, to focus on doing good and helping others. An easy way to tell if you're doing this in your life is to ask yourself this question: are you only focused on yourself, or are you focused on helping others? Now, let's turn back to the guys.
Stuff for young men. Now let's see what this passage has to say for young men. Encourage the young men to live wisely, and you yourself must be an example to them by doing good works of every kind. Let everything you do reflect the integrity and seriousness of your teaching. Self-controlled. Just like God tells young women to have self-control, He says the same thing to young men. What this means is that we shouldn't be controlled by our temptations or our desires. Why? Because being out of control is not only going to hurt yourself, but more importantly, it's going to hurt others and God. There are a lot of temptations out there for young guys, but through God's Spirit, we can overcome those temptations. We need to make it our ambition to overcome that through God. Do good works. Remember what we talked about in the first lesson. God wants you to live a life of good works. Not only giving of your time, money, energy honors God and helps other people, but it also shapes you to be more like Him. Lots of your friends might be getting into all kinds of stuff, but eventually it's not going to be enough and it's going to let them down. The most important thing that we can do is live a life of good works that honor God. Integrity. I've got a question for you. Who are you when no one's looking? You see, the writer of this letter, Paul, writes to Titus saying, you need to live a life of integrity. But what does integrity mean? It simply means being honest. But what's the big deal about a lie once in a while? A lie, though it might get you out of trouble once in a while, or it might make you look cool, the more that you lie, the more that you're going to eventually become less trustworthy in people's eyes. So we need to make it our goal that we live a life of integrity, and so that we can be more trustworthy.
If you are a Christian, I want you to begin to ask God for help in putting these character traits into practice. But there's also one more thing we want to tell you. You need mentors to help you. If we had time to read the whole chapter, then we would realize that God gives young men and young women a way to accomplish this through the help of mentors. You see, God doesn't expect you to be able to do all this on your own. He's placed certain people in your life to help you through this.
When I was a teenager, I was living a life that was super out of control, was really dishonest, and was leading me down a road that I really didn't want to go down to. I'd been burnt by church, I'd gone through multiple youth groups, so my parents went to another church, and again, another youth group for me. But the really cool thing about this church is when I met the youth pastor, something about him was different. And the more I got to hang out with him, the more that he just continued to buy me like pizza at school, and we just hang out, the more I started to look up to him. Why? Not only because he was buying me lots of food, but more importantly, because I saw something in his life that was genuine and was genuinely following God. And he seemed to be really excited about that. And that left an impression on me that I wanted to follow. And so over time, not only did I get more pizza, but I ended up getting to know God in a really cool way because I had this mentor.
Remember, God wants to change every part of your life. That's why he gives this advice to young men and young women. He wants to help you pursue him better.